Everything your family built can disappear in one generation. Caleb sat in a lawyer's office in Charlotte last March, holding a check for $47,000. His father worked for 40 years. Warehouse supervisor. Never missed a shift. Never complained. And after probate fees, medical debt, and 11 months of legal processing, this was everything that was left. $47,000. For a lifetime. Caleb wasn't angry. He drove home, sat in his driveway for 20 minutes, and just thought, not about what his father did wrong, because his father didn't do anything wrong. He did what most people do. He worked. He provided. And he never had a conversation about what happens to money after you're gone. Here's what's unsettling. According to Federal Reserve data, the median inheritance in America falls right around that same range. Caleb's father wasn't the exception. He was the average, and that number tells a much bigger story than most of us are ready to hear. Today, I'm going to walk you through a framework called the root system. 5 quiet patterns that separate families who build generational wealth from those who start over every 30 years. And the first one might change the way you think about your next paycheck. There's a widely cited study from the Williams Group that found 70% of wealthy families lose their fortune by the second generation. By the third generation, that number reaches 90%, not because of bad markets, not because of bad luck, because of something much quieter, the absence of what I call a root system. Think of generational wealth like an old oak tree. Everyone notices the branches, the house, the car, the lifestyle, but the part that keeps the tree standing through storms, that's the roots. Invisible, slow growing, unglamorous, and absolutely everything. Most families spend their entire lives building branches. Almost nobody talks about roots. The old money mindset, the one that's kept certain families wealthy for 3, 4, 5 generations, is essentially a root system, and today, we're going to dig into it. So, if building wealth is something millions of Americans do every year, why do almost all of those fortunes dissolve within a generation or two? The first root is time, not time management, but time horizon. Most of us make financial decisions on a monthly cycle. What can I afford this paycheck? Can I cover rent and still put something into savings? That's not a flaw. That's survival. And there's no shame in it. But here's what separates the old money mindset. Families who build wealth that lasts don't think in months or even years. They think in decades. When the Rockefeller family established their first family trust in the early 20th century, the instructions were specific. Don't touch the principal, distribute only the earnings. Build systems that make it difficult for any single generation to liquidate the core assets. That trust still functions today. Over 100 years later, the original capital has been compounding for more than a century. Now compare that to what researchers have found about sudden wealth. A widely reported pattern shows that a majority of lottery winners go through their winnings within just a few years. Not because they're irresponsible, because their time horizon didn't change when their bank account did. Morgan Housel put it simply in The Psychology of Money. Getting rich and staying rich are 2 completely different skills. Getting rich requires optimism and risk. Staying rich requires patience and restraint. One is a sprint, the other is a root system. The practical shift is small but real. Start making even one financial decision a year on a 25-year time horizon. a retirement contribution, a 529 plan, something that trains your brain to think beyond this quarter. Remember Caleb's $47,000 check? Here's what kept him up that night. It wasn't the amount. It was realizing that nobody in his family, across 3 generations, had ever once talked about what money should do after someone dies. The second root is silence. The old money mindset treats visibility as a cost. Thomas Stanley spent years researching millionaires for the millionaire next door, and what he found surprised almost everyone. The majority of American millionaires don't drive luxury cars. They don't live in the most expensive neighborhoods. They don't wear logos. They accumulate quietly. This isn't just preference. It's strategy. Every dollar spent on something designed to signal wealth is a dollar that's no longer compounding. Stealth. Wealth isn't about deprivation. It's about understanding that the quieter the lifestyle, the more capital stays in the asset column. The Walton family, founders of Walmart, one of the wealthiest families on earth, are famously understated. Sam Walton drove a Ford F-150 long after becoming a billionaire, not as a stunt, as a principle. Let me pause here, because what I'm about to say might sound like the opposite of motivational advice. You don't need to earn more to build wealth that lasts. You might need to want less. Not in a punishing way. In a peaceful way. The old money mindset doesn't see frugality as sacrifice. It sees quiet living as freedom. Freedom from the pressure to perform wealth you haven't secured yet. There's a phrase that floats around in family wealth planning circles. Wealth is what you don't see. The money that's never spent, the purchase that's never made, the lifestyle that stays modest while the portfolio grows underneath. That's the quiet root. The third root might be the most important one, and it has nothing to do with money. It's about what you teach. One of the most striking details in the Williams Group research is this. When they ask why families lost their wealth, the top answers weren't market crashes or bad investments. The number one reason was a breakdown in communication and trust within the family. The second was a failure to prepare heirs. In other words, the money didn't fail. The conversations did.
Thank you.
Old money. Families talk about money at the dinner table, not in a stressful way, in a normal way.
Then we move to
A parent running a family business explains to a 12-year-old why they structured a deal a certain way. A grandmother shows her grandchildren how a trust works. These aren't lectures.
With him everywhere
They're habits.
He went.
Think about Diane. She's 45, a nurse in Raleigh, paying her mortgage, sending $600 a month to help her aging mother, saving for her daughter's college. Her husband wants to buy a fishing boat. Diane lies awake at night, thinking, if something happens to me, who pays for all of this? She doesn't have an updated life insurance policy. She's never named a contingent beneficiary. Not because she doesn't care, but because nobody ever showed her how. Diane's situation isn't unusual. According to a Gallup survey, fewer than half of American adults have a will. The gap isn't knowledge, it's culture. In most families, money is the last thing anyone talks about openly. If that sounds like your family, if nobody ever sat you down and explained how a will works, or what a trust does, or why beneficiary designations matter, you're not behind, you're just at the beginning. And beginning is the whole point. The fourth root is protection. And it's the one most people skip When Caleb's father died without a will, the estate went through probate, a public legal process that took nearly a year and cost thousands in attorney fees. Assets that could have transferred quietly and quickly instead got tangled in paperwork and court schedules. A basic will cost a few $100s. A living trust, depending on your state, might run $1,000 to $2,000. Either one would have saved Caleb's family months of stress and thousands in fees. Old money. Families don't just have wills. They have layered structures, trusts, insurance policies, limited liability companies, designed to shield assets from taxes, creditors, lawsuits, and the kind of family conflict that tears fortunes apart. The Rockefellers, the Mellons, the DuPonts. Every one of them used trust structures as a core strategy for keeping wealth intact across generations. You don't need to be wealthy to start building this route. You just need a will, updated beneficiary designations, and a conversation with a licensed estate planning attorney. That's the shield route. Not exciting, not glamorous, but it's the difference between a family that builds wealth that lasts and one that starts over every time someone dies. But there's one more route underneath all of this, the one that holds the other four together. And it might be the most counterintuitive idea in this entire video. The fifth route is the hardest one to grow. It's the root of enough old money families, the ones who've kept wealth for centuries, almost universally share one trait that separates them from everyone else. They see themselves as stewards, not owners. The money isn't theirs to spend. They're the temporary caretakers of something larger than their own lifetime. Their job isn't to enjoy the wealth and pass down whatever's left. Their job is to grow it, protect it, and hand over something stronger than what they received. This reframe changes everything. When the money is yours to consume, every luxury feels earned. When the money is in your stewardship, every purchase needs justification. The first mindset depletes, the second compounds. Caleb didn't have a dynasty to protect. He had $47,000 and a mortgage, but that weekend after the lawyer's office, he did something that cost nothing. He sat down with his wife after the kids were asleep, opened a notebook, and wrote 3 questions. What do we want to leave behind? What habits do we want our kids to have around money? What's the one thing we can do this year to make that real? That notebook is the root system, not the money. The intention behind it. That conversation led Caleb to do one simple thing the following Monday. It took 15 minutes. And it's the reason his daughter will grow up with a completely different relationship to money. Tonight, try what Caleb did. Open a notebook or a note on your phone. Write down 3 questions. What do we want to leave behind? What money habits do we want our kids to learn? What's one thing we can do this year? You don't need answers yet. You just need the questions on paper. That's the first route. If you know someone who's been carrying the weight of their family's finances quietly, someone like Diane, someone like Caleb, send them this video. Sometimes, a different perspective is all it takes to start a conversation that's been waiting to happen. In the next video, I'm going to break down the specific daily habits that quietly wealthy families practice. The ones that look boring from the outside, but compound into something extraordinary over 20 years. It's not what you'd expect. I'll see you there.